Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm checking out the Eachine Aurora 68. This is a brushless micro, so the motors are 68 millimeters across, which is very tiny, and of course it's another brushless tiny whoop style aircraft. But it's considerably smaller than this one. So this is the Aurora 90. And before I get on to reviewing the Aurora 68, I'll just take you through my experience with these Aurora models so you can see the size difference there, quite considerably smaller. So I reviewed this guy, which is the Aurora 90, and it is just a blown up version of the Aurora 68, but we'll get onto that in a bit. So I had some issues with this one. This is the FR Sky version, and I was getting brownouts. So when I was plugging in the battery that it comes with here, and as soon as it started transmitting its telemetry back to the transmitter, the ESCs were resetting, and either the ESC board or the flight controller wasn't getting enough current and it wouldn't fly, and the only way to rectify that was to disconnect this LED board here, and then I managed to get it fly. Now, some other people had different issues than me, and this is what I want to get across with the Aurora series, really. It's sort of like the inconsistency of them. Some people were getting vibration issues with this model, and when in angle mode it was drifting off to the left. Now, funnily enough, I didn't have that problem. I had plenty of other problems. Other issues as well were that the props are very weak, and they were breaking off in air because they were catching some of these screws, etc., whilst in the air. So after the Aurora 90, I then received the Aurora 100, and again you can see a sort of size comparison there. And I received the FR Sky version of this, and it had exactly the same problems as this one. It was getting brownouts. So I said to Banggood, I made a video and showed what was happening, and then I believed it was caused by too much juice being taken from this battery, and I thought that it was maybe the extra telemetry feature of the FR Sky version causing the brownout. So I asked for the DSM-2, DSM-X version, and that doesn't have that issue, and I had a really good result with the Aurora 100. And then I think probably my favourite of this series actually was this one, which is the Aurora AR Fun. And again, I had the DSM-X. Actually, no, this one is the FR Sky version, but it doesn't have telemetry on the receiver. So this one, again, I didn't have problem with, except for the C rating on the battery of this one was causing it to flip out. So I then used the battery that came with the Eachine variant, because this one was from GearBest, and I really liked that one. So got quite a few Aurora models here, but what I want to do now is focus on the 68. And again, for a size comparison of this one, here is the blade inductrix. So it is bigger, but not by much, so it is a really tiny model, this one. So let's check out these specifications. So the motors are Eachine branded. In fact, the motors are so small they've struggled to get the logo on them there, but they are 1102 11,500 kV motors, so absolutely tiny motors there. And then apart from that, everything else is the same as the Aurora 90. We've got the 10 amp ESC board and the omnibus flight controller. However, you can see there that it's at a different angle to get it to fit in, whereas this one it is in straight on the Aurora 90. So we have a JST connector underneath there. We have this carbon fiber frame, and it does look very thin, this, but the way that it's built, I think it feels fairly rugged, so hopefully it's not going to break in a crash. So we've got these two clips here where a rubber band can go over, so that is where the battery can go in. So you are given a 400 milliamp, but it's only 30C battery. So this started to get me worried because with the AR Fun it was a 20C battery and I was getting the flip of death, as people call it, and that's the brownout. However, I've already flown this and I can confirm no flip of death with this one, no problems with the battery at all. Interesting though, the original batteries for the Aurora 90 are 450 milliamp. They are 80C, but they are 10 grams heavier, so you can't really use this battery on this model. I've tried it, it doesn't like it, so I think it's a little bit too heavy for it. So you are going to have to use the battery that it comes with. So JST connector, balance port there, so you can use your hobby grade charger to charge it. And then back to the frame, so all of the motors are screwed in, which is nice. And then we've got an LED board on the back again, so the same as the Aurora 90 series. Now, the way that they have done the flight controller and also the receiver is different. So on the Aurora 90 it is a stack, so like an all-in-one. On this one we have got the omnibus flight controller, and then just over the top here just a little sticky pad, and then the DSM-2 receiver. So there's no button on this, so you have to use the command to bind it in Betaflight. So yeah, it comes flash with Betaflight already. And then we do have a buzzer, it's at the back here, and that is just on a sticky pad. So they've done away with one of the layers of the stack there. And one thing I really like about the flight controller this time is, can you see there, we have a little Pico connector. This time, rather than a USB connector, we have one of these, and you might think, oh, that's a bit of a pain, but actually, if you remember on the Aurora 90, you had to take one of these ducts off in order to get the USB connector in. Not with this one, this just slots in. It's still fiddly, but it does slot in a lot easier there. So you're given this, which is an extender, and you're also given this, which is a full USB cable, which I much prefer. So moving up, we have got the same camera again, so it's the 48 channel all-in-one, so it's switchable between NTSC and PAL on this first button, and then on the back button you can go through your different bands with a long press, and then through the individual channels with a short press. And of course we have got this protector up the top here, but can you see they have sort of had to squeeze in the antenna because it doesn't quite fit, but it's not poking out the side, so hopefully that shouldn't be too much of a problem. But it's because this antenna comes off to one side there. One thing I liked about this model is the camera was much more secure in this holder than it was on the 90 version. Can you see that? To put a little cable tie around this one. One thing I've noticed though is the antenna has one less lobe than the other version. So you can see there we have got 4 on that one and then just 3 on this one. However, I looked at the picture, and on the picture as well it only has 3, so that must be a design change that they have done there. So it weighs 50 grams without a battery, and then it weighs 73 grams with this battery, so it's going to be very lightweight. Now these ducts here, they do feel weak, so I'm not sure if they're going to break in a crash. I guess though, because they are smaller, then they might actually be stronger in general than on this version. see there as well, these standoffs here are plastic rather than the metal ones on this one. And something that I thought was interesting is these blades, they don't really get close to the ducts at all, so we've got quite a bit of spacing there. Now that could be either a good thing or a bad thing, in that they're not working as ducts, but a good thing in that they're not going to catch and break, and hopefully there'll be less vibrations. So just a couple of other things I want to mention about this model. I've actually had it a couple of days, but I wanted to make sure that I gave it a good fly before I gave my final review on it. So something that did happen with this model is a couple of the wires became desoldered from this ESC board here. So the wires, sadly, are not silicon, so they are quite a poor quality wire, and I was finding that after a few flights, I don't know whether it was the vibrations or what, but some of these wires became detached, and I thought I was getting flip of death, but that wasn't the case. The actual motor was becoming desoldered. So as I say, they're soldered on the other side, which means it's pretty difficult to get to. So you can see I had it happen twice on me. So I soldered this one back in, but I soldered it on the underneath, so I didn't have to take it all apart. And then this one as well, so maybe that was just me being unlucky, but that happened on me twice. Something that is good about this model, and you could do it with the 90 as well, is you can change the camera angle. So if you take a hex driver or the Allen key that comes in the box, you can push the camera forward. So out of the box it was fully back, so it will be flying fast whilst in forward motion, but I prefer to fly a little bit slower, do some flips and more freestyle, so I have angled the camera more flat there. You also get the ducts in shot as well, gives you more of a sort of FPV experience, but if you have the camera tilted back, then you don't get the ducts in shot, but it goes very quickly forwards. So let's go through all the things that you get in the package. I already mentioned the extension cable, which is nice, and also the USB cable that you get as well. You get given a spare set of propellers along with a foam sticky pad, and then you are given a screwdriver and a load of those bands, which is good because I can see those snapping. We have got an Allen key as well, so the props here are using hex screws, and we've got, actually all the other screws are just normal Phillips screws, so you can maintain it with everything that you've got there. And then we have got some 3M Velcro sticky tape. I guess that is to secure the battery, and even more if you want to do that. And then lastly we have the manual, and the manuals are usually pretty good with these Aurora models, so it tells you all of your different channels on the camera, how to bind it to each version, and it also shows you the Betaflight setup, which I will take you through because I did change a couple of things. So as this is the DSM-2 DSM-X version, I'm going to be using my Taranis, but with an orange RX module. In the back, I've already created a model, and I'll just show you the setup for that. So I just called the model the A68 there, and then I went down here and chose external RF. And then let's go over to the input. So it's exactly the same as the Aurora 90 series. So we've got channel 5 set to ARM, so I set that on a 2-position switch. Channel 6 as the mode, and then channel 7 as the buzzer, and then you need to mirror those there in the mixer as well. And of course you'll need to find a way to FPV with it, so I'll be using my Fat Shark Dominator HT3 goggles with the Fat Shark Diversity receiver, the Aomway Cloverleaf antenna, and the Invader Patch antenna from Menace RC. So here we are in the Betaflight configurator. You get this from the Chrome App Store. So it already comes flashed with Betaflight, so no need to do that. However, I do recommend that you flash the latest version. I'm not going to do that because I want to see what it comes flashed with, but I will show you the things you're going to want to save if you are going to want to upgrade. So I've got the quadcopter plugged into the computer via the USB extension lead that you are given. I don't have the battery plugged in yet because the receiver does power up off the USB port. I do have my transmitter connected and switched on, so you can see that it says COM4 at the top, so I'm going to connect to it. So the first thing that I did here was I calibrated the accelerometer. I put the quadcopter on a level surface. Actually what I did was I placed it on top of a cup so that the JST connector didn't get in the way, and that sat really level. And I did that because these models are known to drift and I wanted to make sure that everything was calibrated correctly, so I did that first of all. So let's enable expert mode. You can see that we're getting some VBAT through off the USB lead there. Let's go into the ports. So we have got a VCP set up there for the USB, and then we've got a UART1, so that's for your telemetry through to the on-screen display, and then we have got the serial RX selected on the UART3 for the DSM to DSMX receiver. Let's go into the configuration tab. So it's set up as Quad X, and this is the first thing you need to remember if you want to upgrade to a different version of Betaflight if you lose all of the settings, for example. So the board alignment is set at 45 degrees so it can go in diagonally and miss the propellers. So up here it is set to D-Shot 600. Now motor stop was turned on out of the box. I've turned it off so that the motor spin up when it arms. That also means that I have control at 0 throttle, which I like. So let's just scroll down here. So the VBAT is enabled, and as I say, it's coming through there. And then all of this is stock settings. So the warning cell voltage is set at 2.9, which obviously isn't going to go off because that's before the minimum cell voltage there. So it's just going to have the one warning go off at 3.3 volts. And then it says the battery voltage here as well. Didn't have any problem with the scaling. That was very accurate. So over here we've got serial based receiver enabled, and then Spectrum 2048. So that is for the lower latency Spectrum command. So I will talk you through that in a bit when we go through how to bind it. Now again, it has current meter enabled, but there's no way it's pulling 12 amps just sat on the table without a battery plugged in, so that's an incorrect reading. So one thing I did change was the gyro update frequency. It was set to 8K, and I've turned it down to 1K. The reason being is I thought I was going to have some drift issues with this model. I didn't in the end. However, if you turn down the gyro update frequency, it's going to be less sensitive to vibrations, so I recommend that you do that. But if you're not having any drift issues or vibration issues, then you can leave it. And also changed this to 1K as well. I can never tell the difference, honestly, but that's the number of times that it's doing the PID cycle. So the more times it does the cycle, the more resolution it should have technically. So my thinking is the less resolution the gyro has, the less susceptible to vibrations it should be, but maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Right, LED strip is enabled for the LED strip at the back, and just OSD there as well. And I've also changed the craft name to Andy RC there for the on-screen display. Let's go into the fail-safe here. So it's set to drop out of the box, which is fine. PID tuning. Now these PIDs worked quite nicely. They're not the PIDs out of the box, so I changed the P240, the I245, and the derivative to 23. Also bumped up the super rate to 0.8 as well. And everything else here is stock. Into the receiver, so it's TAER for Taranis. You can see all that is working, no problem. Then I'll take you into the modes now. I haven't changed the modes, but I did have to again move the sliders along because they didn't quite match up with the Taranis PWM value. So it's set to ARM on auxiliary 1 there, and then we have got acro, but no air mode, and then angle mode here, and then air mode, and also acro mode over there, and then beeper on the AUX 3 there for a lost model alarm. Again, I had to move all these along to match that of the Taranis. So I didn't have to calibrate the ESCs, those were done out of the box. On-screen display, I've changed a couple of things. I've got rid of the crosshairs, the artificial horizon, the horizon sidebars, leaving the main battery voltage, the fly time, fly mode, and craft name. LED setup, so you're going to want to save this in a text document, and I'll show you how to do that. So let's go into the CLI. And then if we type in dump, then you can go up here and copy from here, so LED all the way down to about there. And then when you update Betaflight, if you do full chip erase, then you can come into the CLI, copy and paste that into a text document, and then copy it and then paste it in here, and then type save, and that will save your LED settings. So for binding on the DSM to DSMX version, you're going to want to put in this command, set spectrum underscore sat underscore bind equals 9. Now 9 is for DSMX and 5 is for DSM2, and that is for the lower latency option of 11 milliseconds. So if you use 7 for DSMX, then it's 22 milliseconds of delay, and if you use 3 for DSM2, also 22 milliseconds, but 9 will be 11 milliseconds of latency and 5 for DSM2, and that is where you are going to want to go into the configuration here. It's going to reset on me because it does that from the CLI. Let's connect to it. So let's go into the configuration tab. So you see where it says 2048 there? That is for your 11 millisecond latency, and then 1024 is for your 22 millisecond latency. So that's the one that we want there. So let's go back into the CLI and type in version. So it comes with version 3.1 of the Omnibus. So let's just disconnect out of there because I want to show you that it connects to the BLHali configurator. Again, you get this from the Chrome App Store, and I'm just going to plug in the battery here. So let's press connect on there, and then read setup, and there you go, 16.5 of BLHali S. Everything is working. So I'll just show you the LED sequence. You can see there that it is the same as the Aurora 100, so they have gone and changed that. So we have this light that moves across that way, and then nothing actually happens when you arm it. It doesn't change color, but then if I add throttle, then the two middle LEDs change, and then if I put in the aileron or roll to the right, then we have a right indicator and a left indicator, and then you pull back, those two flash. Forward does nothing, and the yaw also does nothing. Okay, let's go for a takeoff with this one starting off in angle mode and see how it behaves. All seems okay so far. Let's fly around with it a little bit. Oh, plenty of power with this one. Okay, let's go for a punch out. Wow, that's a lot of power for a little model, I have to say. Doesn't appear to be drifting at all, so that's good. That's a problem that some of these models have. Okay, let's try the acro and see if I get any brownouts or flips of death or anything like that. It's a noisy thing with those small props. So far so good. I imagine I may see a flip of death if the battery gets too low. And the flight time on this thing, supposedly only 3 minutes, so we could see that happen. Oh, this is fun! I like it. How much crazier is this technology gonna go? One day this thing's gonna seem huge, isn't it? But for now it's tiny. Having to keep it in really close orientation is a little bit tricky, but we have those LEDs on the back. I tend to find when we have ducts and I'm flying line of sight, I tend to struggle a bit more with the orientation. It's quite windy here today, I'm having to compensate quite a lot, but it's managing it somehow. Such a tiny thing. Tiny, but creates its own draft. Okay, let's come in for a landing and do some FPV with it. So here is some FPV footage taken from the DVR of the Fat Sharks. So as with all of these models that have the Betaflight on-screen display, if you put the throttle in the middle and then yaw fully to the right and then pitch fully forward, that's while the quadcopter's disarmed, of course, you can then go into the menu and change the PIDs without having to plug it into the computer. You use the yaw to change the figures and the pitch and also the roll to move around the screen. So we have got the battery voltage in the bottom left hand corner and then the craft name underneath that and then the mode in the middle, so I'm flying in ACO and air mode here, and then we have the flight time there on the right as well as I'm about to do a punch out. So not a huge amount of power, but it's no slouch either, and it's flying very nicely. And I have to say, in the sunny conditions, this camera is performing really well, and there's hardly any breakup whatsoever, which is rare for this style of camera, which I have experienced on the other models. It's just when it gets a little bit dark and dull, then it struggles with the dynamic range, but not today. As you can see, I'm having a lot of fun with it. And the tune was pretty good as well that I gave it. You tend to find that these smaller models don't like to descend very fast, especially when they have got ducts built into them. So that's why I'm using air mode. You'll notice that sometimes on a fast descent, the quadcopter will pitch back a little bit. That is just a characteristic of these models that have the ducts, and when they lose a lot of height it upsets the flight controller, and not really a lot you can do about that other than fly in air mode and make sure you don't do any huge descents. But you just get a little bit of a wobble with this one. It's not too bad at all. The flight time was just under 3 minutes, so they say that you'll get 3 minutes with this one, and I just got a little bit under, so yeah, I think that is a downside to this model. However, I think it is one of my favourite models that they have brought out. Look, a really clear picture, no brownouts, no flips of death. It just flies really nicely, and it was no bother to set up. I didn't have to mess around with it at all. You can see I'm able to thread the needle here through the trees, and I went to chase for this bird and that was a mistake. Probably could have got 3 minutes out of it if I hadn't done that. But there you go, that is my review of the Eachine Aurora 68. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll put a link in the description if you wish to get one. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.